So, what route are cargo ships actually supposed to follow? Well, that's the ultimate dilemma. Right now, commercial captains are caught between two completely conflicting sets of orders. On one side, you have the United Nations and the Western allies telling ships to use a newly established southern evacuation corridor, a path that safely hugs the coastlines of the UAE and Oman. On the other side, you have Tehran demands that all maritime traffic travel strictly through their designated northern choke points. The IRGC has made it absolute. They should use the Tehran-approved transit lanes or don't sail at all. They've issued a blunt warning to the entire shipping industry. Any vessel caught taking alternative routes, especially that UN corridor down near Oman, will be stripped of its safety guarantee and treated as an active target. Which brings us to the ever-lovely. Why did this massive container ship end up in Iran crosshairs? Because her captain took a gamble. The ship was deliberately hugging the southern Omani shoreline, trying to use the UN-safe passage to slip out of the Gulf. But to Iran, bypassing their checkpoints wasn't just a detour. It was a direct challenge to their sovereignty over the Strait. Tehran decided to make an example of them, and that is where all hell broke loose. It is 2:14 a.m. local time. Ever Lovely is cutting through the pitch-black waters of the southern Strait of Hormuz at 18 knots. Her running lights dimmed to a crawl to hide her massive silhouette against the Omani coast. 40 miles to the north, tucked into the jagged coastal cliffs near the Iranian port of Strait, the pneumatic launch racks of an IRGC mobile battery tilt skyward. In rapid succession, 4 solid-state rocket boosters detonate. 4 Shahed 136 loitering munitions are hurled into the night sky. Once airborne, the boosters detach and tumble away into the brush. In their place, the drone's rear-mounted 2-stroke engines sputter to life. It's an unmistakable high-pitched buzz, sounding like a terrifying swarm of airborne lawnmowers, echoing out across the black water. Cruising just 100 feet above the waves to hide beneath the radar horizon, the 4 Delta Wing munitions lock onto the shipping lane's GPS coordinates, spreading out at roughly 100 knots. 12 miles west of the cargo ship, a patrolling U.S. coalition-guided missile destroyer picks up 4 faint surface-skimming anomalies on its X-band radar. The ship's automated combat system instantly tags the low-profile contacts as incoming one-way attack drones. And the electronic warfare suite strikes first, flooding the local airwaves with high-frequency jamming. The lead Shahed goes blind, loses its link, and violently spirals into the sea 3 miles short of the shipping lane. Seconds later, the destroyer goes kinetic. It unleashes a pair of rolling airframe missiles at the coming drones, which are a couple miles from the destroyer. For close-quarter combat, its 20mm full-length opens fires at a blistering rate of up to 4,500 rounds per minute, with wall of tungsten armor-piercing rounds flying into the dark. 2 brilliant orange fireballs illuminate the horizon as the second and third drones are shredded to pieces in midair. But the 4th drone, what naval radar operators call a leaker, slips straight through the defensive net. Because the Shahed relies on a primitive, unjammable backup navigation system, it doesn't need a live satellite feed to find a target as massive as an 1,100-foot container ship. 2 miles out, the drone's optical sensor catches the towering outline of the ever-lovely stacked containers against the night sky. The drone pitches its nose down. The engine screams as gravity accelerates the 440-pound airframe into a terminal dive, hitting nearly 115 knots as it bears down on the ship's starboard side. On the bridge, collision alarms shriek. The captain orders a hard port rudder to swing the ship's stern out of the impact zone. But a 140,000-ton steel giant doesn't dance. The Shahed slams violently into the upper container stacks. The kinetic impact punches right through the outer steel of 3 stacked 40-foot shipping bays. A millisecond later, the internal contact fuse triggers an 88-pound high-explosive warhead. The blast wave instantly vaporizes the drone, shearing through the surrounding container frames and sending a massive rolling fireball 150 feet into the air. The shockwave shatters the starboard bridge windows, showering the crew in tempered glass as automated seawater deluge systems blast the burning deck in thick white foam. Deep below in the engine room, the massive marine diesels never miss a beat. Damage control teams sweeping the deck report 0 casualties by pure luck. The drone hit a buffer zone of dry goods instead of volatile petrochemicals. Limping, scared, but structurally sound, the ever-lovely maintained her 18-knot sprint toward the open Arabian Sea. But how does the U.S. solve this Iranian swarm drone attack? Well, to pull off a mission like this, the U.S. relies on a mixed force of carrier-based aircraft and guided missile destroyers. When radar screens in the U.S. command centers lights up with deadly one-way attack drones were flying in fast, tracking straight toward a ship. The military will have to launch a counterattack immediately. But how do you permanently stop these drone swarms from attacking? They had to trace the attack back to its source, the port city. This time, the weapon of choice was the Tomahawk cruise missile, slammed into the Iranian launch site, hitting it incredibly hard. But what was the Iranian response? Since they couldn't target the mobile U.S. warships out on the open water, they decided to strike U.S. allied bases all over the Middle East. In the dark night over the Persian Gulf, when 4 Iranian one-way attack drones are airborne, flying at low altitudes over the waves hunting commercial shipping. But as the fleet tracked the skies, a far more critical countdown was happening on the ground. Deep within a compound, near the strategic port of Bandar Abbas, more drone was being fueled and prepped on its launch rail. It had less than 15 minutes until ignition. So how did U.S. Central Command track the swarm in the dark? And what precision weapon was used to obliterate the ground control station and drone launchers before that 5th drone could ever leave the rail? For that, we have to look at Part 2, the layered air defense and the aerial intercept. The moment the threat materialized, the U.S. military's layered defense net went live. When dealing with a swarm of low-altitude loitering munitions, these drones are mass-produced and designed to slip beneath standard radar coverage. While heavy land-based strike fighters like the F-15 provide massive firepower from regional bases, they do not operate from aircraft carriers. Instead, the immediate aerial response falls to the carrier strike group's 4 deployed F-A-18 Super Hornets. Vectored in at high speed, the Super Hornets locked onto the incoming signatures. Using AIM-9X Sidewinder missiles, highly agile infrared tracking weapons, the fighters locked onto the heat signatures of the drone's small piston engines. Within minutes, the airborne drones were blasted out of the sky over open water. But shooting them down is only half the battle. To guarantee success against a coordinated swarm, you have to cut the command cord entirely. The F-A-18 Super Hornets don't fly these missions alone. They have bodyguards. Trailing just behind the interceptors is an EA-18G Growler inside its rear cockpit. The electronic warfare officer manages a multi-million-dollar electronic jamming suite. Attack drones rely heavily on pre-programmed GPS coordinates or active radio command links to adjust their flight paths. The EWO's job is to break that link. They immediately isolate the precise encrypted data streams traveling between the drones and their launch site back on land. By blasting high-powered directional energy bands directly at the targets, the Growler completely severs their connection. Blinded and deprived of their telemetry, the swarm's coordination instantly collapses. Get an easy lock and unleash their AIM-9X Sidewinder missiles. The pilot can also go old school, then switch to gun mode. From inside the cockpit, it becomes a game of pure skill. Just align the crosshairs, squeeze the trigger, and shred the remaining one-way attack drones right out of the sky. Speaking of targets, during recent travels to the UK and Ireland, we've had to rely on airport Wi-Fi, which can be dangerously insecure. Surfshark VPN doesn't just encrypt our data, it also changes our IP address, allowing us to appear virtually anywhere in the world. Surfshark also includes robust antivirus protection to shield your devices from malware, ad trackers, and third-party snooping. And finally, with just a single subscription, you aren't only covering yourself, you can protect your friends, your family, or even your entire city if you really want to. So head over to surfshark.com/AITele using our promo link. It gets you 4 extra months for free, all backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. But the U.S. military needs to go to the source of the kill chain, the launchers, erupting from the ship's vertical launch system. Flying at subsonic speeds, the cruise missile used advanced terrain contouring radar and hugged the landscape, staying entirely below the detection threshold of Iranian coastal early warning radars. Guided by GPS and digital seam matching systems, the missile calculated its terminal dive with pinpoint accuracy. It struck the ground control station and the adjacent drone launchers directly, triggering a massive secondary explosion as the fuel and payload of the fifth drone detonated simultaneously. In a single surgical action, the command hub, the launch mechanics, and the remaining threat were entirely vaporized. But the real threat was the strategic port of Bandar Abbas. Real-time intelligence from overhead reconnaissance confirmed the worst-case scenario. The primary drone control team wasn't just monitoring the initial targets. They were actively spooling up a fifth drone on a mobile launcher to prevent a secondary wave without risking manned aircraft inside Iran's heavily integrated air defense networks. Central Command authorized a precision standoff strike. The assignment went to a U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyer positioned securely out of range. We build every animation from scratch by real human. Subscribe so you never miss a beat.